Today's episode is brought to you by DeliverFund, crushing evil in 2025 and beyond. Look down in the show notes for more information. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Gravity Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris. Thank you for choosing to tune in today. Hey, folks, here we go. We're back at it. How do we stay grounded in a world full of noise and chaos? What are your foundations? What are the core values? What are the experiences, maybe your faith, your family, that help you maintain perspective when life gets weird? And if you've been living for any amount of time, you know it's going to get weird at some point, folks. It's going to get weird. And so that's my hope as we come on the podcast, as I bring different guests on. I'm looking for people who I think have perspective. Sometimes it's a very similar perspective as me. Other times I've asked people to come on the show that I think have a very different perspective than I do. And I think there's still value there. So whether you agree or disagree with the guest, that's not the point. The point is you doing an analysis of your own life, you doing that check-in and figuring out, am I a person of integrity? Now, I'm not saying whether you're a truth teller. That's a piece. Are you living your life the way you say you are? Are you living your life as a person of character? And I'll be honest with you, folks, when I do this assessment, I usually figure out there's some way that I'm not. There's something I'm doing or something I'm not doing that I either need to stop doing or I need to pick up and start doing. I share on a recent, actually by the time this airs, it's not going to be so recent. It's going to be a couple months ago, but a Mighty Monday episode, I share the fact that I didn't think I was loving my wife the way I should be loving my wife, in ways that she's going to feel loved. And so right now I'm striving to do that. And honestly, folks, it's easier. That's the thing about integrity. When we live life consistently, when we live life in accordance with the way we either know we should or that we say we want to, for me, it gets easier. It gets easier because it forces me to lay down some things that aren't that important and to pick up the things that are. Today's guest, Chief Joe Harvey from Golden, Colorado, has over 38 years of criminal justice experience, and he has led through difficult times. And I love the things that I hear that they're doing at his law enforcement agency, things that I think we can learn from, whether it be your law enforcement or first responder, or some of the things you're going to hear him talk about, folks, are things you could be doing in your home. Things that are going to benefit you as a mom, dad, husband, wife. If I got some young folks listening, it's going to benefit you as a brother or a sister, as a son or a daughter. So stay tuned. I'm excited for you to hear from Chief Harvey. But before I talk about that, folks, I want to talk about Deer Hollow. It's the hat I'm wearing today. If you're watching on YouTube, and I've shared with you before, Deer Hollow was the place that I went when I needed help. You can call it help. You can call it training. Both are true. I needed extra training for my brain to empty out my cup of trauma, to empty out my rucksack with the big heavy rocks in it, and I needed additional training on how to manage stress and heal my brain moving forward. And that's what they gave me. And I am so appreciative for all of the staff, from the clinicians to intake, to the doc or the nurse practitioner, to the chefs, to the techs, to my fellow clients. Everyone that was there really played a huge part in my healing process. Folks, Deer Hollow may not be for you. It may not be for you. It may be for someone that you care about. So down in the show notes, there's going to be a link and a phone number for them. If you know someone that's struggling with either post-traumatic stress injury, just a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, maybe they're abusing substances, Deer Hollow is one of the places that I recommend. And know the information so that when your loved one needs that extra help, needs that extra training, you can pass on the information to them and get them what they need. Folks, With that, let's get into our interview with Chief Harvey. Chief Joe Harvey, welcome to the Gravity Podcast.
Good morning, and Chris, and thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for our conversation, the pre-conversation we had. I was already interested, but now I'm even more interested for us to get into the topic just around life, leadership, and wellness. I mean, my listeners hear me say that all the time, that those are the main topics we revolve around, and I think we're going to be hitting on those today. Hey, Chief, for folks that maybe haven't heard your name or haven't heard your voice before, can you give us just a brief introduction of who you are?
Sure. Again, my name is Joe Harvey, and I'm the chief of police in Golden, Colorado, which is the home of Coors Beer, Colorado School of Mines. So easy for people to kind of recognize it once you say Coors Beer. But we're on the west side of the Denver Metro, right at the base of the mountains. It's a beautiful city, but yet 4-minute drive into the rest of the Denver Metro area. I have been in law enforcement for 38 years. I started as a civilian employee in 1987 as a dispatcher with the Douglas County Sheriff's Department. So I have that county experience. And then they sent me to the academy and was a deputy sheriff for about 3 years. And then went to a place called Greenwood Village, which is the Denver Tech Center. It's kind of the second largest traffic hub outside of downtown Denver. We butted right up to Denver. I spent 21 years there. Retired as a commander, and I was recruited by my predecessor, Bill Kilpatrick, to join the Golden Police Department. I've been here for 10 and a half years. So, I always say it's important when you're talking about leadership to have time in the seat. And I'm very proud of the fact that, as a police officer over my 35 years as a police officer, I spent, almost 9 of those as an officer learning the job, doing lots of different things in the job. And then when I was promoted to sergeant, I spent a healthy period of time doing that because you gain wisdom by having time in that seat.
Yeah.
And so I was in that seat for about 8 years, and then just about 10 years in middle management, and the last 7 in executive leadership, being a deputy chief and a chief. So, it's important to me, and I think for the listeners to know that in that 38 years, I've either worked in, supervised, or commanded every division in a police department twice, 2 different departments, and done it twice. So I've been exposed to a lot, and I think the leadership comes down to your technical knowledge in many ways, the way you deal with people, your experiences, but exposure to a lot of things.
Yeah.
It helps you kind of navigate this career. And I think it's important, as you're going through that, to give yourself some of that experiences in a lot of different venues.
It gives you perspective. I remember
Absolutely.
I was a brand new cop. I worked in Linwood, Greater Seattle area for a couple years, lateraled back over here to my hometown, and I'd been a street cop for 10 months here. So a couple years over there, 10 months here, and they had an opening in detectives, and I did not want it. Unfortunately, at the time, our CID division, the hours they worked, no take-home car, no on-call pay. I mean, there's just a lot of reasons why there was a lot of senior people they were like, why am I going to do that? I'm not going to go be a detective and get a slight pay reduction so that I can work more hours and have more responsibility. And so they came to me, and then if I said no, they were going to go to another recent lateral and just said, hey, we want you to take this. And I remember sitting with the detective sergeant, and I said, no, thank you, sir. I want to be a DUI cop. Like, that's my focus. That's what I want to do. And he was like, you need to consider this. So I talked to, I think, 4 mentors, if I remember correctly. And 3 of them told me, Chris, take the opportunity. You're gonna get a different perspective of our job. You're gonna be a better patrol officer. If you don't want to do it for very long, don't do it for very long. Go do it for 3 or 4 years. Come back, and your skill set as a patrol officer then is going to be supercharged. And that's what I did. I went and did it for 4 years, came back, and I could handle just about any call at that point. I mean, I'd also been on the SWAT team, so that gave me perspective in reference to the critical incidents. But I mean, like, if my sergeant released me, I remember getting a call one day. It was this malicious phone call to an elderly woman that was really, really, really disgusting, the things this guy said. and she didn't have traditional landline. She had a voice over internet, which meant
Mm,
I could figure out who called. You know,
sure.
traditional landline, they came in through some banks. I couldn't get I could get a search warrant, but it wasn't going to narrow it down to the exact phone call, whereas voice over internet would. And so I called my sarge. I'm like, if you kick me loose, I will arrest this guy by the end of the day if he's local. And my sarge said, absolutely, you know, vulnerable adult, do it. And I had this guy in custody, registered sex offender. And but it was because of the perspective. And in this case, I guess the skill set as well, that experience and perspective, right? That
Sure.
allowed me to do that. So I am a huge advocate of people switching jobs because you're gonna be better at the core job when you have these other perspectives.
Yeah, I always like to say to people, you don't know what you don't know until you know what it is you didn't know.
Yeah.
And so that's what those other experiences and exposures give you.
And then as a leader too, I mean, I had the opportunity to be a sergeant of a number of different units, from patrol to CID to special services. And once again, it gave me different perspectives of the nuances of each of those positions, even though I'd served in all of them as an officer or detective. Uh, it's slightly different as a leader. The core foundation of leadership wasn't different. The core foundation of leadership, taking care of my folks, focusing on our mission as an organization, that was the same. But there were subtle nuances that gave me better perspective and made me a better leader, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's rewind back. I don't always do this, but let's rewind back to the early days, right? Like I remember being a young cop, and I'd get to work and I would just be like, I can't believe they're paying me to do this, right? I mean, I grew up as a police explorer. My dad was a cop, so now I'm in the driver's seat. I was just excited that it was Friday night and things were probably going to happen. What are some of those early memories, whether it be an early call or just the camaraderie, whatever it might be? What are those early memories of being a police officer?
So like you, I started as an explorer in 1983 with Douglas County, and I did that for 4.5 years and was fortunate enough to raise up through the ranks to ultimately being the captain of the program. And that's what parlayed me into becoming a dispatcher because they had four dispatchers who quit at the same time.
Oh
And the
wow,
undersheriff calls me, I'm in college, starting my second semester in college, and said, do you want a job? I'm like, well, I'm not sure I'm going to college. He goes, well, we'll work around your college schedule. But I had worked in the dispatch center as an explorer, so they
yep.
ended up hiring three of us out of the explorer program. And I'm an identical twin. My twin brother was one of them. And so I took that job. But my law enforcement experience, of course, I had ridden so many times, and I find it interesting that I'm quickly closing in on completing my fourth decade in law enforcement,
Yes,
right?
you
Two more
are.
years
Yep.
from now. And I remember the days of driving around in a patrol car with no cell phone.
Oh yeah.
I had a I had a revolver, there we didn't have computers in the cars. There was no CAD systems. It was a shotgun, a revolver. You did your own crime scene investigation. Um, I finally remember back on the days of being trained to handle anything. And nowadays there's so much specialty around it. But I remember fondly there was a detective. Her name was Kim Christensen, and she was amazing. She always forced you outside of your comfort zone. And I remember getting called. Douglas County has a section of the of mountain in the jurisdiction, 844 square miles. So um, I get a call of a body up there, and so I get on scene. It's a young girl, a tragic case. She went unidentified for about 24 years.
Oh wow.
Uh, and it was one of those cases that kind of haunts you. But I remember
Yeah.
getting on scene, and I had an explorer riding with me, a kid who's now a lieutenant in Douglas County, and I was taking on the mentoring role of him. And so here I am, 23-year-old kid now. I've got almost 3 years in, and she uh, she comes up to me and she says, "Okay, Joe, it's just you and I." And I'm like, For what? She goes, we got to process this scene. And, taught me how to pour a cast because we had footprints and all that stuff. And, you know, she just instructed me. This is a potential homicide case.
Yeah.
And she's standing right over me. Okay, you're going to start from the front. You're going to pour to the back. Walking me through everything. But she made me mix it. She made me pour it. You know, she talked to me about when you're on these kind of scenes. This is where you approach from. This is what you're looking from. You're going to be taking, notes. Because we didn't have tape recorders in those days. A lot of these really incredible experiences like that from the baby boomer generation that taught me the skill sets. And then I think of a, sergeant named Brock McCoy, who I used to call Papa, and you know him, uh, him scolding me at times for making mistakes. But you were given the opportunity to make mistakes, right? There was no participation ribbons.
Yeah.
It was you were out there, And then I also think to some of the experiences that weren't so healthy, right?
Hey, folks, a quick break in the episode to recognize our sponsors. This episode of the Gravity Podcast is brought to you by DeliverFund. DeliverFund is a nonprofit organization that equips law enforcement officers and eventually prosecutors with cutting edge tools, training, and intelligence to fight human trafficking. And here's the best part of it, folks. They do this 100% free for criminal justice organizations. This is what attracted Jamie and I to the DeliverFund mission, and this is why we give money on a monthly basis to be part of the DeliverFund team. I didn't want to just share my experience though. I want to read someone else's. I'm going to read this from Ryan Dill. He's an assistant county attorney for Hillsborough County in New Hampshire, and he writes, "I handle child sexual abuse, child exploitation, and human trafficking cases. The work DeliverFund does is critical to my work by giving intelligence to agencies and investigators, and I can use that evidence in court to hold those people accountable and put people, pretty much what he says, is put people who abuse children behind bars." Folks, whether you're a prosecutor or a law enforcement officer, you need to look down in the show notes. You need to learn more about DeliverFund so you know how you can use this resource. And if you're like me, you're not a commissioned police officer or you're not one anymore, you can still be part of this team. You can choose, like I do, to give money on a monthly basis. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see what my shirt says, to crush evil. So please check them out in the show notes. This episode is also brought to you by First Responder Health and Wellness, a telemedicine provider built specifically for those who serve. As a first responder, sleep is everything. And like many of you, I've struggled with this. That's why I started using their supplement lines. And since adding this to my overall sleep routine, I've seen a noticeable improvement, both in my sleep quality and then also in the way I feel in the morning, my recovery. And it's because they get it, folks. It's because they get it. They've lived it. And whether it's quality supplements or if you're looking for a new primary care provider, First Responder Health and Wellness is here to keep both you and the first responder families mission ready. And here's a bonus, folks. Gravity Podcast listeners get 15% off of supplements at checkout by using the code GRAVITY15. Folks, learn more. Look down in the show notes or visit firstresponderhealth.net and really take your wellness into your own hands. With that, folks, let's get back into this episode.
I negotiated with a guy for 45 minutes while he cut himself to pieces with two butcher knives, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
In a house. It's just a tragic scenario, and it's a domestic violence, and I get the wife and the baby out of the house, and he's bipolar and he's drunk, and I came very close to dispatching him that night,
Yeah.
and I told him to back away from me, and he looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're going to watch me die anyway." So one of these very difficult calls. And in those days, all we did was pat you on the shoulder, say, "See you tomorrow, kid."
Yeah.
And so we've really evolved, I think, a long way from those days. And so while I look back on those experiences with deep heartfelt adoration for the people who really kind of trained me the old-fashioned way of down and dirty, you know, knees and elbows into the call, doing the real work, right? Learning
Yeah.
really how to do real detective work, how to really be a good police officer without the use of tools, where you have to use your instinct and your training and your experience and the wisdom that's been passed on from generation. I look back on those, but I also think today we're doing a lot better in a lot of different ways too. And of course, those tools certainly have enhanced our ability to do our job, and I think get outcomes for our communities that, really make a difference.
Yeah. I love the fact that you're naming some of those mentors. The reason is I like to recognize these folks that shaped our careers and ultimately our lives.
Sure.
I was a young detective, been a cop now for 3.5 years, and I go 100 miles per hour. Like that's my pace. I have two paces, 100 miles per hour, and then I sleep sometimes, right? Like, I mean, and I remember it wasn't a homicide, it was a felony assault where the guy ultimately probably should have died. And but modern medical technology saved his life. And I'm partnered up with Detective Wes Gardner, and I'm getting ready to process this crime scene at 100 miles per hour. And Wes was from the South originally. He was a lieutenant somewhere over on the East Coast or somewhere down in the South, and lateral tier, and uh, and he was super happy just staying at that position of line level officer detective, and giving his skills there. And I remember him grabbing me on the shoulder and said, with his southern drawl, which I'm not going to do it justice, but he's like, "Chris, slow down. Let's just sit here and look at it for a little bit and figure out where we need to start." Great wisdom.
Yeah.
Great wisdom. And I'd like to think from time to time I pulled him just a little bit, right? And he definitely had some reins and pulled me back. And the place where we landed with processing the scenes or investigating crimes when we were partnered together, I think it was a really good pace. I know once again, and I don't mean to come back to this, but it gave me perspective. And I also love that you contrasted that. Here's the folks, listeners. Policing is a remarkable profession. It is a remarkable profession, and the default I think that can come, chief, or at least that I experience sometimes, and this is not my normal default as a human, is to remember the bad, is to remember those tough crime scenes where we saw or heard or smelled the horrors of this world. And those are true. Let's also force ourselves to remember the remarkable stories, whether it be those times that you were out there making great arrests, those times that you were putting really bad people behind bars, or you were learning new skills, or just on a coffee break with someone and you are laughing so hard that your stomach's going to rip open here in a second. I think we have to force ourselves. I do this in a gratitude journal. And I don't always journal it. Sometimes I'm just verbally expressing it, but I think it's important for us to do that. Well, I'm going to tell you this. I know it's important because I've read enough on brain science and the impact that it has on our brain to force ourselves to be grateful for truly good things like this cup of coffee I'm holding in my hand. I'm grateful for that right now. I'm grateful that you and I are having this conversation. Yeah, I love the way you contrasted that.
I appreciate it. I do need to make one correction. I said Kim Christensen. I was thinking of Don Christensen, who was the undersheriff, who also had a huge impact in my career, but it was Kim Castellano. And
Okay.
so she happens to be listening to this podcast. I want her to know that she had a significant impact. I will, I think that, the interesting thing is sometimes we forget that it's really okay to make mistakes, that, as a father now, and I started, being a father much older in life. I was almost 46 when my twin boys were born. It's sometimes okay to remind them you're going to make mistakes. And so,
Yes.
when I'm hiring, I want somebody, I always say I want a little tarnish on the pot. A few dings is pretty good. You don't want
Yeah.
gaping holes, but some dings are okay, because it means you faced some adversity. You've had your knee skinned and you had to get yourself back up and get back into the game. and we're better at doing that today than necessarily we were younger because we just didn't recognize what we were going through, right?
Yeah,
We don't,
yeah,
that's why, it's sad to say, but suicide is still one of it's the number one cause of death for first responders. We carry this rucksack, for the military folks out there that um, we like to just put rocks in, and we
yeah,
just like to accumulate our rocks. They're not your rocks, they're my rocks. And I don't want
yeah,
nobody taking my rocks. And I don't want to talk about my rocks either, you
yeah,
know. Um, and Man, the second we can start unloading some of those, you know, you feel uplifted, right? I was just having a conversation with one of my team members. Who's going through some struggles, and he and I have had to have some hard conversations about addiction and getting yourself right. And you know, and the hard part is as the chief, and I think it's really apropos for what we're talking about now. I also have a job to do, right?
yes, you
I got
do.
X's and O's that I have to check off. There are boxes I have to check off. And we were just having this conversation about how it didn't feel good to him when I'm checking off the boxes and the things that I'm needing to do, right? I have to talk to the psychologist about fit for duty evaluations, and I got to talk to HR about having the right steps in place so when we do bring you back, everything is ready to go, right? But when you're in the moment, I'm thinking of it as I'm just doing my job. I have no choice. And um, Chris, the one thing I'll say is in my organization, when I took over as chief, I immediately said our number one priority is not public safety.
Is not.
It is not public safety.
Okay. All right. Yep.
That's number two.
Okay.
Number one is taking care of my people. We're going to put our people first. And when I say this in the community, when I say this to the city manager the first time, people were like, they're giving me a look like, what do you mean public safety is not? And so I always explained to them, I said, listen, we can go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The very first thing people need is shelter, food, clothing,
Yes.
those basic essence, right? Before we can get to self-actualization about, how I'm seeing my career and the steps I'm going to take and, feeling nurtured at home, feeling nurtured at work. So the one thing I said is we're going to put our people first. And so one of our values is one team, one family. And I started with just one team, this one team concept. And I put into our strategic plan that employee wellness was going to be critical function of our department. But for me, I wanted everybody in our organization to know I'm putting you first, your needs first. And we started doing things like 100% psychological care for you and your family. And we're going to remove the stigma, and we're doing fit foods, and we're having we've got a table filled with natural healthy foods, snacks and things rather than some of this stuff. We do family events, right? So three times
Yeah.
a year, we bring everybody together and we've got the whole families there. These things are all important, right? But when you
Yes.
say that in a community, my number one priority, our number one priority as an organization is to put our people first. And then I explained to them, but make no bones about it. Our number two priority is public safety, and we go after it with all the fervor in the world. Our job is to make sure we keep you safe. You want to be safe in your home. You want to be safe when you're driving through the city, right? You want
Yes.
a police officer that's going to engage with you in a meaningful way. But how do we do that? By taking care of our people, by making sure they're healthy and happy. And so I said, who do you want coming to your door? Do you want an officer who hasn't been sleeping well, who's carrying that rucksack filled with rocks and is tired and worn out because we don't care about him? Or do you want somebody who's going to come to the door who's unloaded some of that stuff, who has alternatives, right? That we are focusing on mind, body, and soul, right? I have an incredible chaplaincy program here. I hope my wife doesn't hear this, but I'm going to be doing my 15-year anniversaries coming up, and my chaplain sneaking to the house, and we're going to redo our vows right there with her immediate family around and my kids. um,
Yes.
these are the things that you can do nowadays that we can be celebrating because we're putting we're putting our people first, right? And that includes looking at myself. I used to be a workaholic, which is one of the components of that we're going to be talking about today is this compressed work week. And actually being able to take a step back, right? Learn. And when we learn, you become a force multiplier. When you become a force multiplier, you expand everybody's health, right?
Yeah.
And so, we really think about it. And so now everybody in the community, they're like, they know that Joe puts his people first, right? One family didn't come until we lost Officer Evan Dunn, who was tragically killed on November 6th in the line of duty. And I saw how our department came together under this one team concept. And it occurred to me that I started doing these family days. And, for me, I'm a connector and a relator to people. So I sit down and I spend a part of my day, just like I was this morning, just connecting with people in the organization and learning about them. And I'm like, man, it's one team, one family, one team, one family. And the first time I said it was during my eulogy at Evan's funeral.
Mm.
And I'm talking to 3,000 police officers and the church and the family and everything. And I started off with we're one team, one family, and now it's taken on. And this is where we've really come, Chris. I mean, if you really think about it, right? We would have never been doing this podcast years
No.
ago.
No.
No way. And I know it's a newer phenomenon, but just the idea of a couple of cops sitting down and kind of talking about stuff you've gone through,
Yes.
things that are difficult in a career. And the essence of why we're doing this podcast is this wellness, your mission now about bringing people together and this idea of thinking about leadership, and how do we do better with that? And how do we really improve our wellness to now where we're talking about it's okay to say, you know, psychological care is important. When I lost Officer Dunn, Evan, I was incredibly close to him.
Mm.
Uh, and I was carrying this tremendous guilt because I had hired him as a code enforcement officer. And I knew he was applying to go to the FBI, and he was a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. He's a captain in the military, and his passion was flying. Um, and he and I spent a lot of time because his cubicle was on my way to the bathroom every day, and I drink a lot of water. And if I saw him sitting in his cubicle, I always stopped off and we'd engage 5, 10, sometimes 15 or 20 minutes. Sometimes he'd come into my office and I started learning. And he's like an onion, right? I mean, he's one of those guys you got to peel
Yeah.
back those layers. And there's a lot of crying and time it takes to get that, right? And I might have only gotten 6 or 7 layers deep because he was a very private man. But when we lost him, I carry, still carry. I mean, still carry. It's only been, 10 months, but uh, a part of him with me, right? And
Yeah.
so, you get lost. And it was my wife that came out to me and said, "You're lost, honey.
Mm.
You're separating from the family. You're watching the funeral 8 times a day.
Yeah.
You're just coming upstairs with a drink
Yeah.
and walking your way in your room, and you got to get some help." And because of where we're at today, I looked in the mirror and I said, "You know what? You're right."
Yeah.
And, you know, and I'm not, so I told everybody, I'm like, "Hey, I'm in therapy now myself. You know,
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
I'm, I'm going to Dr. Brower's office and I want people to know it's okay. I've had people come into my office, Chris, and say, "You saved my life." I'm like, "How did I save your life?" And they're like, "Because you give us the opportunity to get psychological care." This is the essence about putting people first, right? Becoming one
Yeah.
team, one family, and saying that the wellness of our people is important because we do a very difficult job. And it's not necessarily, I think a lot of people understand that when they start thinking about the role of law enforcement, they're like, "Man, that's a dangerous job." Well, you know what they don't realize is, yeah, it is dangerous, but it's dangerous 1% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we go up on every vehicle and we don't know, we don't get to pick, right? So we're always living in this heightened state. I was a SWAT operator, you were a SWAT operator. You know, we live in this heightened state of awareness. And,
Yes.
we have that guardian warrior mentality going on. One of my officers named Sham Syed, he's an amazing, incredible tactical officer. And I was talking to him about this warrior guardian mentality, and he said, I'm always a guardian, but the warrior is ever present. And so I
Mm.
use that now, and I always give him credit. I said, yes, the warrior is always present, right? But we are St. Michael. We're wrapping our wings around our community.
Yeah.
Well, so when people think about the role of policing, they look at it and say it's pretty easy to say, yeah, it's pretty dangerous. Well, you lose sight of the fact that the most important things we do is how we speak to somebody on that traffic stop, or when we're engaging a kid on the street, we're throwing the football with them and we're trying to have them see us, or the SRO who's in the school who's engaging with kids
Yes.
every single day, or the victim that we're embracing because we're seeing them at their worst, right? These are the rocks we carry. And this is why wellness is so important for us, and unloading that rucksack and being willing. I tell my kids, we're going to therapy with my wife, and I are taking our kids to therapy. Why? Because I'm the first time parent of 11-year-old kids. I don't have the experience. I'm 57 years old, Chris.
Yeah.
I don't have the experience of raising 11-year-olds
This is your
in my
first
full
time.
day. It's my
Just your
first
first
time.
time.
And you know what? It's their first time being 11.
Yes.
They don't know what it's like to be 11-year-old, starting puberty and not understanding the hormones and things that are clicking in their body.
Yeah.
We have to all be aware, more self-aware, um, of what we're going through in life, and then feeling free to unload those rocks. And I think that's what your podcast in particular, and then hopefully what this is going to do, to just remind people to say it's okay. Give yourself a little grace, take that step back, give yourself just a little grace, and recognize the job's tough, but it's tough being a human being too.
Yeah. Wow. So many different topics there that you touched on, Chief, and I really loved it. You brought it back to the rucksack analogy, and that one really resonates with me. Being Air Force, I was Air Force Security Forces, so I mean, we did go on ruck marches, and you touched on one right there at the end. Being willing to go to counseling and being willing to tell others. Now, I recognize for some folks that's a hard one because, well, that's my private life, that's my medical, it's no one's business. Yes, you're right. And if you've stepped into any role as a leader, whether you have stripes, stars, or bars, or whether you're just a senior patrol officer or detective that everyone respects, when you talk about it, you're going to plant the seed. Other people are going to go, and someday you're going to hear about it. Someday someone's going to come to you and say, I've had people come to me and tell me, Chris, I quit alcohol because of you. I'm like, what are you talking about? You talk about it all the time on social media. And I realized I had a problem. So us verbalizing it, not preaching at people, just verbalizing it. Here's my story. This is what I got going on, folks. It causes other people to follow. So, what are other things we can do to unpack the rocks? Maybe specifically for you. Now, eventually, I'd like to get to that. What are you doing as an organization? Some of the unique things you guys are doing. But right now, just individually speaking, what can we do to get some of those darn rocks out of our rucksack?
Well, I do think that it is the very first thing is it becomes culture in your organization, right? You've got to have a culture where it's safe. And the funny thing is we always make sure our scenes are safe, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When you're doing CPR, I'm clear, you're clear, we're all clear, right? Before we run that AED, all of these things were just built into us. But yet sometimes we don't even create a safe space in our own workforce to be vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
As a leader, I have an obligation. I have a leadership obligation to my team to be vulnerable. And when I become vulnerable, I hope it opens the door to creating a safe place. And the more people that do that, then the culture starts to build from there. Now, I was talking earlier about mind, body, and soul, right? And so let's talk about those three things because that's what really helps us kind of unload these rocks, right? So we're talking about mind. That's the psychological care. We do pay for it. Um, we pay very close attention to what's going on. For example, we had very difficult CSAM case. For those that haven't been detected, that's child porn. Um, and I had a number of detectives that were going through massive amounts of very visually disgusting things,
Yeah.
hours and hours and hours. And it was the sergeant and the commander who recognized an impact was happening in the team by watching closely. And we called in to Dr. Brower's office and had a specialist come in and work with the team. So we pulled them while they're on duty, we pulled them into a room and said, we're going to have a kumbaya session, right? We're
Yeah.
going to start talking and we're all going to talk, right? Let's talk about what we're feeling, what we're seeing. Let's get it out. I think being aware of those things are important. So that's this mind piece. And then, are we giving them good training, right? We got to we all of our people go through mental health first aid for police officers, all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
we giving them the tools so that we can be working their mind. But then on the leadership side, are we talking to our supervisors about seeing changes in behavior and then going to that person and saying, hey, what's up? Your performance is starting to slide. And it's funny because when we did assessment centers in the day, we always built something like that in it, but it ain't easy to identify, and it certainly ain't easy to sit down and have a crucial conversation with somebody about something that might be going on because it's conflict, and a lot of people shy away from conflict. We do very good at it when we're handling calls for service, but internally it becomes uncomfortable. So let's get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yes.
So teaching our supervisors to say, hey, it's your job to tend to the garden. And when you're tending to the garden, it means pulling weeds. And sometimes it means adding peat moss to the dirt and to the soil and some fertilizer and making sure you're getting sunshine to it, making sure you're getting water to it, a little plant food. All of these things are important. You have to be active, and active means you're watching for signs, right? So this is the mind part of this, you know, not being afraid to say, uh, I've got a guy that works for me is in the military. He's a Marine, served in Afghanistan and Iraq. He was blown up. Got a lingering severe TBI, and we've been talking about being open to all kinds of therapies. I'm 100% on board with whatever it's going to take. I am willing to talk about the mushrooms, the psilocybin. I can never
Yeah.
pronounce it.
Psilocybin. Yep.
There you go, psilocybin mushroom. Yeah, I'm willing to look at it. Right, under the direction of a good doctor. Right.
Yep.
How do you feel about you know marijuana? I'm open to it as long as it's under the direction of a doctor, right?
Yep.
Um, you know, these are the things that can also heal the mind. We got to look at these kinds of medicines, right? Brain mapping, EMDR, all of these things. I'm looking at those because one of my boys has severe ADHD. So, being open to and not again putting this negative connotation on any of these things, right? Ketamine treatment, right?
Yep.
Again,
Yep.
under the care of a doctor, whatever it is going to do to keep your wellness key, so that when you're coming into work, you're good, right?
Yep.
And again, I don't. It's got to be under the care of a doctor. You can't come into work high.
Yep.
You can't come into the work on drugs. You have to be doing this stuff when you're on your days off or on your time, and work with a doctor so that we know you're not intoxicated when you come into work, because you may use force on somebody. You have to take somebody into custody. We have to protect people's constitutional safeguards. But if this is done under the care of a doctor, then it puts that employee in a place to be healthy and happy when they come into work. And so we should be open to all of that stuff. And let's reduce the stigma. As a chief of police, we need to be open to that. And quite frankly, there are some very traditional people that may be listening to this podcast saying, that guy's woke, he's lost his mind. Ain't no way I'm approving any of that stuff. Um, well, you're behind the time. So
Chief,
there's your mind.
I thought that. And I reached out to one of my friends, Doc Shauna Springer, PhD, trauma expert nationally, potentially internationally. I don't know. And I said that about psilocybin. And she goes, Chris, you need to stop. She's like, you need to look at the medical research. So we're not talking about like, well, let's just try something new. Folks, it feels new to you, but we have a lot of data behind the things that you just mentioned, Chief, that that shows the benefit to our humans.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And and it's under the direction of a doctor.
Yeah, people aren't out getting high. You know, they're not
No,
finding someone on the street to
they're not
score
self-medicating
some
at home.
shrooms.
Right.
I mean,
This
they
is
they might be, but if they're doing that, then there needs to be accountability, right? Because that's
that's
not
right.
okay. But under the
If we
medical direction of a doctor.
Yeah. Psilocybin mushrooms is no different than ketamine, and ketamine is now becoming very mainstream in law enforcement circles under the care of a doctor and working with HR. They don't tell me now because I'm a connector with people and they trust me. My team members come in and tell me,
They do tell you, yes.
but that's because I've directed them to go work with HR. And HIPAA protects all. They don't have to tell me anything,
Yeah.
but they know that I'm open and willing to listen to any of these things about making that. All right, so that's the mind piece, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the body, right? We got to talk about physical fitness, right? And I'm not saying that you got to be, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, but how do we get people to do the things they enjoy, whether it's bike riding, hiking, CrossFit, throwing the weights around a little bit, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
got a little bit different for them. How about feeling good enough to get out and playing basketball with your kids outside,
Yes.
right? Or running around with a soccer ball, or just being active, right? Going to the pool and swimming. These are things you got to get that body going, right? You got to get that dump of the stuff out. And so we got to really focus on that. And we've done a pretty good job of that, law enforcement. There are a lot of agencies with really great gyms. We're getting ready to build a brand new police department. I made sure, City Hall and Police Department, but I made sure because in my department, I don't have one. We have to send them to the rec center, or, the sheriff's office allows us to use their gym. But I'm building a 1,700 square foot gym right on the
Yes.
main floor. I've already bought all the equipment. We got it stored so people know it's coming,
Yeah.
right? Um, we for a long time gave our officers 2 hours of PT a day. We'd let them 2 days out of their 4 day work week to go home an hour early to get to the gym. Now we're on a compressed work week, which we need to get to, but um, these are the things, right? So body, got to make sure that they're physically fit. We talk about fit foods. We're giving them good information about health and well-being in terms of what you're eating and drinking water and all of those things. Very, very important.
Yes.
And then soul. Um, for us, we have a very incredible, vibrant chaplaincy program here. And Kevin Shive, who started Rocky Mountain Chaplaincy, he's the lead chaplain. He started in Golden. Now he's the lead chaplain for the FBI.
Oh
He
wow.
he has started this massive Rocky Mountain chapter, and he has trained hundreds of chaplains and put them in law enforcement organizations all over. He is, I'm happy to say, uh, I don't have a lot of close friends, Chris. We don't do very good in law enforcement. He's one of my best and closest human being friends on this earth. I
Yes.
love him like a brother. We have been through um, a lot of significant emotional events together with this department of facing adversity and, you know, uh, from some of the most simplest things to losing a police officer in line of duty and being by my
Yeah.
side as we're going through, not just the notification process, but um, you know, all of it and the healing that we're still doing as an organization after the fact. But he's the guy, along with Libby and Dan Tomke, that put themselves in the car with our guys and gals, right?
Yeah.
uh, Guys and gals in a very positive term, my brothers and sisters in arms,
Yeah.
and my brothers and sisters that are non-sworn that have just as an important role as every police officer. Got to break
Yes.
down the barrier between sworn and non-sworn. It's not sworn. If you ain't sworn, you ain't born. It is one team, one family, right? Everybody has an
Absolutely.
important role.
Yeah.
But he, uh, these three individuals, man, people, they get in the cars and people start unloading on them. And now they're doing marriage counseling camps, where husbands and wives are going to the mountains for a weekend retreat and they're talking about how to become a better husband and a better wife and a better father, a better brother, a better sister, right? And they're talking them through the most difficult, and they're getting them married, right? They're marrying the people in our organization because they has incredibly built this trust factor. And
Yes.
so when people see them, they fall in. My wife loves Kevin Shive. I want to repeat that. She loves Kevin Shive because he has ingrained himself into the roots of our organization. And it ain't
Yes.
always talking about religion, right?
Yeah.
We've got every form. I have an incredibly diverse organization from all aspects, and that includes religion. Whether you're agnostic, whether you're atheist, whether you're Baptist, whether you're Judaism, Hindu, Catholic, you name it, Protestant, doesn't matter. I can name a bunch of them. I have folks that kind of dabble in all of these different realms. He's not there just to be a chaplain. Now, if you want him to be a chaplain, he'll be a chaplain. He's
Yeah.
there to talk about your soul. And, he and I meet every single month. We go to breakfast every month. We talk on the phone all the time. I see him routinely. I go up to his church and talk to him. And there are times where he and I talk about the Bible. There ain't no doubt about it. There are times where, I'll be like, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? Or how does this play? And certainly he will talk to me about that.
Yeah.
But it's also about him just talking about how to be a good human being.
Yes.
That's part of a soul too, right? How do you be just a kind, good human being? And then he also serves as a non-certified, non-educated doctor because people feel sometimes more comfortable unloading on him than they do going to somebody in therapy at Dr. Brower's office or Code 4, whichever agent, whichever service you're using here. So
Yeah.
for me, that's what I do. Those are the kind of the three areas I look at, to kind of bring this back to building that culture within the organization.
I like that you talked about it in those general terms and then gave specifics within. I think that's valuable for folks to start the conversation at their organizations. And actually, let's start rewind back a little bit to start the conversation with yourself and with your family. How can we improve our wellness? How can we move the needle in these three areas and then grow the conversation in your organization? I love that your organization has, you've mentioned it now, and this was the reason I reached out to you in the first place. Was I was curious about your compressed work schedule because I hadn't heard of this before, working a 4/8 schedule. Tell me more about that. Where did the idea come from? Tell me about the implementation of it, the problems maybe you faced with it, the successes. Yeah, let's break that down.
Yeah, let's so the first of all, I want to give credit where credit's due. The Golden Police Department was not the creator of the compressed work week, right? I didn't bring it to the city manager. The city manager brought it to us. So it was implemented here because of Scott Vargo, our city manager, who's an innovator and creative, but he also believes in work-life balance. And so he came to us and said, "We're going to do this 432. It's what we called it. We call it compressed now because it's really not a 432. It's really about compressing the work week." And so when he started talking to our management team, right, public works director, parks, community development, finance, all of us sit together as our management team, and he brings this concept up. We're like, what is he talking about?
We
You
can't
know,
do this. We've never done this before.
well, nobody had. And so, of course, we end up starting this small work group, and the small work group ends up being the city manager, the deputy city manager. Her name's Carla Lorenz. Her father was a 43-year retired division chief, so very familiar with the law enforcement end of things, being raised in that family. And then our HR director, also very progressive, and then me. So the four of us become the small work group. Um, and as soon as I heard about this, I'm like, Chris, I got to be honest with you. I'm like, I'm getting this for my team. I'm fighting some people to get this for my team. This is going to be it. You can be blind and see this one coming. This is going to have a significant impact on the health and well-being of our people.
Yeah.
And so Scott said we're going to pick some different departments and divisions to kind of roll out a you know see if we can do this. We're going to roll it out and see if we can do this, but we're going to do it see small, shoot small, right?
Yeah.
And of course, so he says if anybody's interested, you need to get with Christian. So of course, I'm the first one in Christian's office. I'm like, I need this, and I got it all. I got 24/7 operation. Um, I got technical. I got tactical. I've got clerical. I've got it all. All right. You can find a microcosm in the police department to fit just about any envelope within the city.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, Scott saying the police department is going to do this. Well, uh, uh, probably didn't go over well with some of my peers because many times, in a lot of cities, the police department are the special people. And to a certain extent, we are. We're the ones that really, I sometimes have to remind people you're at home with your family at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and a large portion of my team's not.
Yeah.
You're home sleeping at night. Large portion of my team is not. You don't go into houses after dangerous people or into the dark chasing after somebody that's armed and dangerous, and my folks do. You
Yeah.
don't carry the burdens that law enforcement carries. And so ultimately, we get selected to do this opening period of trial and error. And a lot of it got picked us because we're also data driven, right? Law enforcement's data driven. So we have metrics that nobody else that they don't think
Ex-
about, right?
yes.
And so that was a huge consideration because we got to sell this back to our people. And so while I already can track my response time to priority one calls and then priority two, three, and beyond, right? I already know how many tickets I'm writing per month, per year, how many traffic stops we're making, how many arrests we're making, because we got all that data,
Yeah.
right?
Historical
I
data for
know, right?
years.
We
Yep.
know, so we had it all. So we had the X's and O's to do the comparison. And so we did do that. And the goal was, we were on a standard 410 schedule. So I'm just going to talk about patrol because everybody else is pretty easy to figure out. If you
Yeah.
got a records unit, you're not 24/7 operation. We were not 24/7 in our records unit. We're business hours. Um, how do you make that work with four people? Pretty easy, right?
Yep.
You know, the special operations unit, investigations, traffic, all that stuff, school resource officers was complicated. I'll get to that one in a minute. But
Yeah.
so how do we make that work? Well, those were all pretty easy. If they were on a standard 410, we're just going to take 2 hours of the day away. And so that's exactly what we did. So we started, we went back to the way it was when we worked 8-hour days. I mean, I worked 5 8-hour days when I started in this career.
Yeah.
5 8-hour days with 2 days off, folks. That means when I was young, I had Tuesday and Wednesday off.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes, I worked and I had on graveyards and I had Tuesday and Wednesdays off because I was low man on the totem pole with no seniority. So nowadays, everybody gets a piece of the day, piece of the weekend, and they get 3 days off. So this schedule was like, I'm like, this is going to be incredible because now instead of trying to give them 1 hour every other day, I'm giving them 2 hours a day. And it's not just about physical fitness anymore. It's about work-life balance. And that's the key here. It was
Yes.
creating work-life balance. Now we had to sell the community on this idea that you're going to be paid for 40 and you're only going to work, if everything goes right, 32.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm looking at some data right now and I'm going through, we tracked everything. I tracked with the help of our finance department exactly how many hours each team was working in a 1 week period, um, and then a 2 week period. And so I track it by 2 week increments, and I can look at the averages here. So I'm looking at my day shifts, and it's 33.68, 30.56. I'm just picking some random numbers, right? But across the board, all I'm seeing is 32s, 33s, 34s with a sprinkling of a 35 or a sprinkling of a 37.
Yeah.
Um, and that was the team's work schedule for 2 weeks. That's how many average hours they worked in a week over 2 week periods of time.
Yeah.
So it was working. And I've got 3 years of data here. And then I can look back at April of just this past year, and it says 54, 47, 56, 48, 48, 49, 44, 47, 47, 44. What happened there? Well, a lot of bad stuff happened in April, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Part of it is we had to go to an emergency 12-hour schedule too because I lost some
Okay.
folks.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, but that's it. The rest of the time, we were able to make it work. There are some spatterings of 35s and 37s in there. And you got to remember, that's for the entire patrol shift, right?
Yeah.
For that whole team. And so we were able to make it work. So for the most part, people are getting, if I were to average all of this stuff out, it's probably going to be about 33.75 hours. We'll just throw a number on it.
Yeah.
That's what they're working per week. So it can work. You can do it. You can make this happen. And what ends up happening is people are finding ways to use those hours to make themselves more happy.
Yes.
Now let's ask ourselves, if you are working, if you're worked a 5/8 schedule and somebody walked up to you, and you can say this to anybody in society, and somebody walked up to you and said, you know what? I think we've been overworking you. I'm going to take one of those 8-hour days. I'm going to give it back to you. And you're just going to work 4/8. That's the easiest way to translate this down because for cops, we were already working for 4-day work weeks and
Yeah.
we were no different. But to the normal person, you got to tell them if somebody came up to you and said, you've worked so hard, we're going to reward you and you're going to work 4 8-hour days and I'm not going to change your pay. Who in society would say no to that?
I don't know anyone that would.
And then you got to ask themselves this question. What would you do if leadership's about whys and what ifs, right? Whys
Yeah.
and what ifs. We always ask ourselves whys and what ifs, positive and the negative. And so, what would you do with that 8 hours? Well, that's what I had to live with because I was a guy that started my workday at 5 a.m. That means I was at the office by 5 o'clock and then I went home at 4. So do the math, it's 11 hours a day. That was the starting point, 5 days a week for my job. If I had city council, if I had community meetings, those days would turn into 17, 18, 19-hour days. Significant call comes in, those can turn into 22-hour days, right?
Yeah.
That's the job. So I started 55 hours a week was my starting point. On average, I worked 65 hours a week. So when they came up to me, Carly sat down with me when she was the interim city manager for a period of time, and I told her this is what my schedule. She goes, and I said, "Are you okay with this?" She said, "No, you work too much. You have a family. You got to start taking care of yourself." It was the first time in my career. Now, mind you, I'm 57. I was 54 then. So I've been working this job a long time before somebody finally said, "You're working too much."
Yes.
I'll talk about my own struggle. I struggled with the concept of the compressed work week the same way I struggled when Carly looked at me and said, "You're working too much. You have children and a wife, and you
Mm.
have your health to think about." See, it's always been easy for me to look at all of the things we've been doing, the things that we've been talking about, and say, do as I say, not as
Not
I
as
do.
I do. Yes.
And so I literally had to sit back and say, wow, and it was my deputy chief who's also my age. He said, you start with an hour, start working 10 hours a day, and then go from there. And so I was able to kind of get to the point where I was working, 45 or 50 hours. So I cut, but when you cut
That's a
10,
huge
15 hours a
reduction.
week, a big reduction. And then this compressed work week comes in, and I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to cut out another? How am I going to get down to 32?
Yeah.
Well, the goal wasn't for me, it wasn't get down to 32. For me, it was how do I get to 40 in 4 days? How do I get to 4 tens?
Yes.
Give myself Friday off. How do I get to there?
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, it was a struggle. I felt guilty. I was carrying more rocks in my rucksack because I was feeling guilty and had to learn. I had to retrain myself, recalibrate. Now, I will tell you, it doesn't always happen. This particular, I'm going to talk about this weekend, right? Friday, I got to go to a retirement of a colleague. That's my day off. And then Saturday, I'm going to a funeral service for a long-term public servant in Golden, 50 years. She was mayor for 8 years. And I'm going to her funeral on Saturday. So I still have to do a lot of things on Fridays and Saturdays.
Yeah.
But my wife told me, go golf. And I'm like, yeah, but summer the kids are up. She goes, I don't care. Get a tea time in the morning, get a tea time in the afternoon, get away, go golf, do something for Joe.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that. And I
Mm.
discovered golf again, which I love because when my kids came, I used to play golf all the time. When the kids come, especially when you got two of them the same age,
Yeah,
uh,
I bet.
I ain't lying. There's a lot of work to be done, right? And so
Yeah,
you put
yeah.
yourself to the side. So she said, I need you to go. And so I've been doing that. So I've learned how to do that. And now I talk to other folks that are learning how to do it. So there's a lot of incredibleness that goes into a compressed work week. You can make it happen. We would need at least two more of these podcast hours and we're going to go over here, folks. And I'm good. My next meeting's not till 8:30, so I have a little bit more time. So I want to talk a little bit more about this. You can make it work. And I have talked to chiefs that have said, you're smaller than us. I don't think we can make that work. BS. You can make it work if you're willing to put your mind to it. And I have talked to um, mayors and city managers and chiefs, sheriffs, all. I just had a virtual meeting 2 days ago with Clark County in Washington. Um, this can be done. Okay. You just got to be willing to do the work. And it was a lot of work. You know, the person who puts my 150 metrics together and we've tracked, I'm looking at it right now. I have tracked the budget. We track so many things here, Chris, that I got a legend at the beginning of this spreadsheet
Just
so
to
that people
describe what everything means.
we tracked overtime. You want to get the Chiefs excited in the room. How about this one? In July through December of 2022, and I'm a smaller agency, I spent $145,000 in that 6 month period of time in overtime. In 2023, before we uh, started all of this stuff, um, it dropped down to 185. Do you know what happened my first 6 months on this? Dropped down to 30.
$30,000 in overtime.
So I went from 145, then on this it dropped to 85 as we were doing the first
85.
transition, then it dropped
Okay.
down to 30, and here's where the magic happened. Once we started working through it, 9,000 6 month period of time, and then an 8,000 during a 6 month period of time.
Oh my
I
gosh.
spent less than $20,000 over 12 months in overtime. Now, some people weren't happy about that, right? Because some people need that overtime to pay the bills. So there is an education that has to go with it. I have to remind people, do not buy a Ferrari on a
Yes.
Volkswagen budget. This is
Yes.
part of,
You,
um,
financial literacy. We
yes,
It's like the starter kit, the police officer starter kit. You walk into any police officer parking lot and you're going to see a bunch of big brand new trucks. And I drive a 2000 Toyota pickup truck. And I love that truck because I own it.
Yes, and you're not paying. And how about this, Chris? Focus on your retirement. Take a little bit of every
Yes.
single pay raise and put some money away for a rainy day. So,
Yes.
so for the Chiefs and stuff, they're going to love hearing this stuff, So my budget now, I budget $75,000 for overtime annually. I was budgeting 335,000. Now I do budget another 75,000 for special event pay, right? Premium pay,
Yeah. Yep.
because it's a compressed work week. So you have to look at the bucket of money differently, right? And so I don't want to force people now because they're only going to have work 32 hours. And technically they owe me 8 each week to say, now you're going to work this special event for free. No, I put a bucket of money away so that when Buffalo Bills days happen, or we're doing the 4th of July, or I got another Super Cruise weekend, that people are signing up for that as off-duty pay, but it's being paid by the city, right? Instead of a third-party vendor.
Yeah.
So I do that. And this year I've spent it. I went through some tough time, Chris. I had to terminate 2 employees. It was very difficult, and as a result of those 2 terminations, I had to demote 2 sergeants, and one of those sergeants ultimately left the organization. So I lost 3, and this happened. Those moves happened exactly. The last decision happened 11 days before we lost Evan Dunn in the line of
Oh, wow.
duty, and almost lost Bethany. 2 officers hit by a DUI driver, crushed underneath the car.
Mm.
Uh, One survived. Fortunately, she's back to work and doing well. But we lost the other one. So now I'm down 4. And then I lost a couple other ones to, as a smaller department, I lose cops to big departments, right? They want to go
Yeah.
to the bigger department.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I understand that part of my job is to prepare these officers to go to a larger agency. And then, we're a 401 and agency that has a 401. It's very lucrative. When it's all said and done, it's 29% going into your retirement every single month, 16 by the city, 13 by the officer. And that's if you do a 3% match. So it's lucrative. But I had an officer that was in a FPPA pension plan for, I think, 14 years and left here after serving here for many years to go back because he's 50 years old and he wants to get that FPPA bucket filled up so that he can have that guaranteed retirement check. So
Yeah.
understand. So sometimes I lose people for those. So all in all, I've got 8 brand new officers that are in training, right? Now, some of those are laterals, but they're not solo yet. I'm going to have the first one go solo. So here I am in August, and I'm going to have the first one go solo in 2 weeks that we hired from Florida. And so you can imagine we had to go to an emergency 12-hour shift. And I'm painting the picture here so people understand it's also tough stuff that happened. It's tough stuff that happened in the department, creates a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty, and uncertainty is a dangerous thing for law enforcement officers. We like to make certain
Yes.
the
Yes.
things that are uncertain, right? We like to program non-program decision making. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we
Yep.
talk about in OODA loop. That's what we talk about getting off of the X. These things are important. So uncertainty breeds stress. It breeds resentment. It breeds uh, people thinking, well, geez, if he fired, why did he fire them? Right? Because we can't talk about it.
Yep.
Creates stress. So the we had to go to an emergency 12-hour shift. So it's 36s now for them. And that creates some stress and frustration. Um, the one thing that we lost, so you're never going to sit here and, first of all, we had to understand this is part of a wellness movement. Okay.
Yes.
This is about work-life balance, but it is also about wellness. And it is about leadership because it takes strong leadership to work through it. And we were able to do that. And it is, when you're on that standard, it's easy to get your team down to the 8s, right? But what do we lose in there, Chris? We lose our overlaps. What
Yep.
happens when you lose the overlap? You lose connectivity
Yeah.
to the team. That is a big negative about this, is the roll calls got to be faster,
Yeah.
right? When you get done writing your report, you there's not as much free time to sit there and BS with your partner for 15 minutes, because we do track metrics and we got to be able to prove that we're doing the job right, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Our response time to emergency calls have stayed the same.
Yes.
You know, our productivity increased. Let me hit you with some data. You know, calls for service for us in a 6 month period of time, and again, we're a smaller department, stayed within the exact same range. So there was no change. It's on average 16 to 18,000 calls for service every 6 months. For some agencies, they're going to say that's a lot of calls for service. For big agencies, they're going to say we get that in 1 month, right?
Yeah.
Um, but let's talk about self-initiated field activity. On the 10-hour shifts, I was getting 2,447 events. It raised to 4,000, then it went to 6,000, then it went to 7,500, and I'm looking at the most recent data, and then it went to 7,800. So it increased.
A lot.
Productivity increased, right? You
Yes.
can look at case reports, all stayed the same, right? Anywhere between, um, you know, 1,100 and 1,300 case reports, all stayed the same. Arrests, 295. These are 6 month period increments. 301, 333, 301 stayed the same or slight increases, right? Let's talk about traffic stops and citations. 2,000 stops, 1,167 citations over the last 6 months, 3,256 stops, resulting in 1,671 tickets. Or the month before that, 3,267 stops, 2,034 tickets. Productivity either stayed the same or increased across the category. Community engagement, one of the most important things. 495 before. How about 1,114 hours? Because people are feeling better about themselves, better about the job, and they're out engaging people in the community, right? We've got
Yeah.
a very important creek that people go tubing down. Our cops are walking that creek, talking to people. Thousands of people a day come here to go tubing. These are the results, right? And response time data. So all of the numbers are very, very positive. And I can talk about crime now. When we talk about crime, right? No chief wants to take credit when the crime goes down, just like I don't want the criticism heaped on me when it goes up. This is a roller coaster ride, folks.
Yeah.
Crime has ebbs and flows. And sometimes we do a very good job of impacting that. But what we do know is that sometimes being visible, sometimes being in areas you might scare somebody away. Well, when the officers are out, that because the community is going to say, well, that cop car's not out there that extra 2 hours. You're correct. So it is important to remind people that we have to be active. So I had to learn how to use my calendar better, right? I have to learn how to make sure that when I say I'm in a but my meeting is 30 minutes, I keep it to 30 minutes, right? I know I've got exactly 10 more minutes that I get to spend with you before I have to get off.
Yeah.
And so you have to be very wise about that. My executive staff meeting that might last 3 hours, I've had to cut that down to an hour because they got things to do. When I go in and I'm talking to my records unit, I used to be able to pull up the chair and spend 30 minutes with them. Can't do that anymore. So we had to reprogram ourselves to do that,
Mm.
right? Take advantage of virtual meetings. And when we talk about something, let's get it out. But then I have to say, okay, commander and deputy chief, you guys need to go work on this now because I don't have any more time to give you. So I've thrown out my thoughts and my ideas. Now you guys come up with the answer, right? So you
Yeah.
have to be strategic about that roll call. You know, you got to get that 10 or 15 minutes of training, right? Gordon Graham always says, every day's a training day.
Yeah.
So you got to get in there solid, realistic, ongoing, verifiable training. We got to get those 10, 15-minute increments in. Um, and then you got to give them a little bit of time for some jocularity.
Yep. Yep.
We're still brothers and sisters. We still got to get through it. But then we kind of talk about, hey, can maybe two or three of you get together for lunch, but we can't all be together. All those little things that we normally think about, you got to get that stuff done.
Yep.
So it's been fabulous. So that's one of the things. And then the overtime. So the communication really has been a bit difficult. Um, for me, I try to get to all the day shift briefings. Well, we had that hour overlap, so I got to spend a lot of time with the graveyard folks. Now they
Yes.
don't understand why they don't get to see me. And I'm like, I got a life, folks.
Yeah.
I love you. You are my secondary family, but have a life too.
Yeah.
And the compressed work week means that I need to try to get home to my family so that I can spend quality time with my two young boys and my wife. And, we're the caretaker of a 90-year-old grandmother. My wife's comes from a very traditional Mexican family, and you take care of your grandparents. And so
Yep.
grandmother lives with us. We've been caretaking for her for 4.5 years. I've got things I need to do when I get home, and I want to be able to do it too. And I already work a lot, and there are some weeks as the chief of this organization that I still do 50, and sometimes it goes into 60. Hey, that's the game. But I am working to try to work 32. And when we're on this schedule, even the emergency schedule, and hopefully we won't be on it long, it's a constant reminder that we need to compress as often as possible. So if there's a day and the call load is down, Sergeant, go up to that person and say, "You're going home 4 hours early today." Surprise them. Instead of saying it's going to be 12 today, surprise them. Now they're getting 4 days off, right? So don't get it twisted. You're working three 12s and you're
Yeah.
getting 4 days off, and they love them.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but I also know, because I worked 12s for a long period of time, I've worked it all nines, rotating threes, five on, three off, you name
Yep.
it. I've worked it. 12s ain't healthy. They are not healthy. We talk about wellness, they're not healthy. And sometimes you have to be the decision maker to remind people that, yes, I know you like your 4 days off, but it is not healthy for the body. And I worked them for 5 years. You guys are on them for a short period of time. It's an emergency schedule.
Yeah.
It will take a toll on you physically and mentally, and you will become exhausted. And you're going to be like, it's the third day of the 12, and productivity will start to decline. We did see some of that with the 12. So,
Yeah.
um, but for me, it's that connectivity, right? And I don't get to spend as much time. I try to get up and get in at least one day out of the week to get here at 5 o'clock to spend a little time with graveyards. But it's hard, brother. I'm telling you, it
Yeah.
is hard when I know I've got a city council night, or, I end up with a fair amount of community events in the evening. And so balancing that out. So, and then for the cops, sometimes the loss of the overtime for some. I haven't found that to be a significant issue. Um, and then here's the other thing I'll tell you is, and I use this with a bit of humor. The one thing I know about cops are we are like piranha. We chew ourselves up.
Mm.
We like to feed off of each other. And the other thing is we are very vocal when we get a dirty diaper. So when you have a baby and that baby gets a dirty diaper, they become vocal. Uh, Cops complain about everything. If I give you a gold bar, you're going to say, "How am I supposed to get this to the car? Somebody can help me carry it," or "Who's paying the taxes?" Or "It's not big enough." Or "Are you sure this is all gold?" Right? Because we're skeptics. Are you sure there ain't a little bit of lead in this?
Yeah.
Uh, and so even with this, what ends up happening is when we say compressed, and the way we sold this and the way we have to get our people to understand is that when the call for service comes in, it's not a guarantee, right? It's a gift. Well, they didn't like it when I said this is a gift. Well, it is a gift. And I said, well, what other word would you like me to use? Because it is a gift, because I'm paying you to go home and be with your family.
Yeah.
It's no longer that I'm paying you an honest salary so that you can take care of your family, back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. No, now I'm giving you 8 hours of pay. I am paying you to be present in physical fitness and work life balance.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've got to pull some of those coins back. And so when we get that hot call and it's at the end of your shift and you get carried over for 2 hours, I don't want to complain, right? Now we're
Yeah.
going to try hard the next day to get you out 4 hours early, right? Or 2 hours early. We're going to try to get it back to you, but sometimes it can't.
Yes.
And then sometimes I get complaints over that. And I'm like, really, Chris? Sometimes I say, really, you're working 8 and you had to give me 12 today, and I couldn't flex it out. So you only got 6 hours this week, and you got 8 hours this week, and you're got a dirty diaper.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to remember that, once we get it, it becomes expectation. right? Once the city manager said the police department is indefinite now, not permanent, but indefinite. And as long as we're maintaining this and we're doing good and the data is showing that we're making progress, then we're going to keep it. But it becomes the expectation. And sometimes when we can't meet it during this week or during this period of time, because on paper, I'm fully staffed. In reality, I got 8 people in training.
Yes.
That's not fully staffed,
No.
right? And so, you know, it, and so there's some heartache going on. And so I try to remind them, yeah, I understand it. It will get better. This is temporary. Give a little grace, assume some good intentions, and it's temporary. It is fabulous. It is life altering. There are agencies all over the United States that have reached out to us. I haven't spoken to anybody from Alaska or Hawaii yet, but all over the United States. And I'm doing a lot of we've the city manager and the deputy city manager and the HR. They just did our city managers conference, and they spoke to all the city managers and county managers in the state. I've gone to counties and spoken to their entire management teams about it. I've spoken to pockets. I've spoken to mayors. I've spoken to city managers. This started in places like Iceland, and there's books on it, called Compressed Workweek for 432. Think about this: work-life balance, work less, become healthier. You can do it if you're willing to put in a little effort and a little. It is the greatest gift you can give your department team, is to give them time back with their family, to give them time back to go hiking, to go do all of these things. And I didn't know how much it would mean to me personally until I was out on the golf course and I'm swinging the club and I'm like, give myself a little grace. And I'm like, man, all of a sudden you start seeing, man, I feel a little better today, and
Yeah.
man, I'm
Yeah.
sleeping a little better at night. And man, I'm not so stressed when I go to work on Monday. And man, I'm going into the weekend and my kids got this going on, this going on, this going on. I'm feeling pretty good about it because I had 4 hours on my own to go play some golf with my buddies and I'm laughing.
Yes.
Now, sometimes the phone goes off, so I had to learn how to silence that little thing because I've been there and I'm like on the first hole and the thing's already ran 8 times. But I got to know if somebody on my team is hurt or injured or if they need me, I want to be there for them. So I had to learn I got to take this 4 hours for myself. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, Chris.
What I and I think this is a great way of summing this up. The change in mindset. So for our chiefs or sheriffs, directors listening, you may have to change your mindset. It may be around psilocybin. It may be around this compressed work schedule. And for the leaders that don't have stripes, stars, or bars, or some of our senior patrol officers or senior detectives, you might need to change your mindset. You have a voice that you could speak into your peers and they are going to listen to you because you don't have the formal rank. And you may need to tell your peers, hey, everyone, take a breath. Why are we griping about this? Let's look at this through the lens of what it is. And I I think, well, I don't think, again, getting back to science, our mindset is going to have one of the greatest impacts on the outcome of our lives. The way you cause yourself to view things is going to transform your life. Not polishing a turd here. It's going to transform your life in you're going to be a happier person if you can do that transition.
Yeah, I will leave with this. Most people don't even understand where the 40-hour work week came from. And I think it was President Truman, it might have been Roosevelt, I can't remember offhand right now, wanted to change because there was no regulation on how many hours you could work. So this is the beginning of FSLA. And so the president wanted a 30-hour, an established 30-hour work week, and Congress wanted 50. They settled on 40. Well, what if the president would have won and we were doing 30 hours?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
come on. I mean, that's where the 40-hour work week came up.
Yeah.
It was a discussion between, well, it probably wasn't a discussion the way politics works, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it was Congress at 50, president at 30. compromised to 40, and now it's 40. It
Yeah.
could have been 30. And I'm saying, think about 32.
Yeah.
I know you're going to ask me this question. How can people get a hold of me?
Yes, sir.
I am always open and willing to talk to anybody. My work email address is my first initial, my last name. So it's JHARVEY, J Harvey at cityofgolden.net. My all my contact information is on our website at City of Golden. So just go to the City of Golden Police Department. All my contact information is on there. And then, of course, I'm on LinkedIn. So if you want to reach out to me that way as well. There is no question that's too small. I don't have all the answers, but I have some. You want to talk to me about compressed work week. You want to talk to me about chaplaincy programs. I've implemented equity-based policing in our department. People that want to talk to me about how we rebuild trust in our communities after 2019, 2020. I can talk to you about that. Just reach out and let's get on a virtual call.
Well, for the listeners, I'm going to make that really easy. All of those links will be down in the show notes. Chief Harvey, time is my greatest commodity. I can't make more of this stuff, and you've given me a lot of yours, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate you, and keep on doing what you're doing. It's an important message to get out to all of the communities that listen to your channel.
I will. Have a great day, sir.
You too.
One team, one family. I love that mantra, folks. I love that mantra. Recognizing the family, recognizing the not just the employee of the law enforcement organization, but recognizing that we are whole people. They're paying people to spend time with their families, folks. And they're seeing all kinds of statistical data to say this is a better way for us to do it. And I recognize law enforcement agencies of all sizes, it's going to look different for you. But I really encourage you, if you're a chief, if you're command staff, if you're a union leader, consider it. What could we do to work less hours? And would it actually produce a better product for our citizens? And if the answer is even maybe, I think we got to explore what this looks like. Hey, folks, Jamie and I constantly want to hear from you. How are we doing here on the podcast? There's a few different ways for you to communicate back to us. First and foremost, please follow us on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. That will cause the next episode to come up in your dashboard. You can rate and review us if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. There's 5 stars waiting on the main page, and we would really appreciate a 5-star rating if we've earned your 5 stars, folks. If we haven't, keep your stars. Instead, shoot me an email at chris@gravityct.com. Let me know how to make a better future Mighty Monday motivating ideas or guests for me to interview. Folks, we only get to live this life once. Let's go out and take care of the people in our tribes. Take care of each other. God bless.